different areas, but we're still going to keep increasing what we do here
Hmm.
because, it is hugely important.
Oh no, that's great to hear as well. Though you're investing in Northern Ireland, you're investing in the young people that are here, and that's something that I'm really really passionate about as well. I run the Young Entrepreneurs Network for Northern Ireland, which is for 18 to 30-year-olds. And, it's that sort of support hub and a place where we can come together and look at those unique challenges that young entrepreneurs do face. Is there anything that you would suggest to young entrepreneurs, if they're listening to this and they're thinking, God, he's such an interesting story, he's really inspirational, the things he's achieved, and he's still, only 32. Um, would there be a top tip or something that you would offer to these young entrepreneurs in order to drive them forward?
Yeah, I think, networks like you've mentioned, Princess Trust, also like, YouTube University, there's so much books, like you can go to the library and get free books. You need to have I feel a bit of a drive in terms of, I feel you want to be uh, interested instead of interesting. I think, a lot of people are too concerned with putting up fake posts on social media and pretending that their life is something that it isn't. And,
Mm-hmm.
I think you want to be curious and, it takes time if you can. It's obviously probably not the best time to go traveling, but even if I look back to myself, the things even at university and other times is when someone comes in from business, which is why I'm a big fan of, sharing my story. And I don't even think it's that good a story, but I do feel it kind of plants a seed and it makes things accessible. But for me, like books can be the best mentor possible. You can just get someone's life experience for next to nothing. And even the old quote kind of, any fool can learn from his mistakes, but the
Mm-hmm.
wise man learns from the mistakes of others.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned from both, but it cuts so much time and mistakes if you can just, learn from other people who have, been there and done it to an extent. And you'll find that most people in business or, will like to give back, especially to young people. And I just started reaching out to people, messaging them, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's no better time, like especially if you're young, there's no better time. And right now, given that, we are in a deep recession, this is the best time. All the best companies, well, the vast majority have been created during, a massive downturn or recession. So,
Mm-hmm. Well,
yeah,
it's that sort of. I'm really passionate about growth mindset and looking for those opportunities. So that's what you're saying there. At the when we go through trials and tribulations and challenges, and when it doesn't necessarily seem as if there's a way out, that's the time for creativity and innovation and using your imagination, basically.
yeah, and definitely you mentioned the growth mindset, Carol Dweck. It's a
Yeah.
really good book. But not everyone's into reading, but you can get summaries, you can get podcasts, you can get YouTube. So, I do feel you need to definitely, feed your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Garbage in, garbage out. You need to put good stuff in there. And also, I've mentioned on other podcasts, I don't really like quoting quotes because I think it's a bit cliche sometimes, but there's one from a guy, Charlie Tremendous Jones, and he talks about, in 5 to 10 years, you'll be the sum of two things. It's people you spend most of your time with and the books you read. And I definitely think that's a hugely important one because sometimes, another saying, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. If you're hanging about with a group of people that maybe are not up to much good, you're probably going to end up going down that route. So, you want to ensure you're keeping good company, and doesn't mean you have to have like five really good high flying friends. Even books or,
Mm-hmm.
can be a great learning experience.
Yeah, that's it, definitely. Just as you said that, I've got my Carol Dweck mindset book sitting on the window ledge looking at me. So, so I definitely agree. I absolutely love reading. I actually did a degree in English with linguistics. So I'm a bit obsessed with reading, and definitely, as you say, they're the people that you're surrounding yourself with, what you're feeding your mind is so important, not in terms of just what you're going to achieve, but, your thought processes and the way you interact with people and, the way that you conduct yourself, I think, as well in everyday life.
Yeah, no, totally agree with you, Katie.
Mm-hmm. What would you recommend? Is there like a book that has sort of really hit home for you or really inspired you? Is there anything that you'd recommend in terms of reading?
Yeah, I mean, I've read quite a few. I think there's a book called Magic of Thinking Big, and it's more of a mindset kind of book, and it just opens up your mind in terms of some of the opportunities. I mentioned previously 4 Hour Work Week from Tim Ferriss. I know it's a bit of a clickbait title, but it is quite a good book as well, especially for people that maybe are looking to transition from a job into maybe creating their own business. And then I like autobiographies. Shoe Dog is the founder, Phil Knight from Nike. It's a slow burner to get going. Just to give you a heads up, I almost nearly stopped reading it, and glad I did persevere because it's a really insightful read, just the story of how he created Nike. So any autobiographies from Steve Jobs is another amazing one. But yes, I'm always conscious. Sometimes I think all I talk about is books, and some people don't like reading, which I understand, but that's where podcasts come into it.
Well, that's it. As you say, we've got podcasts, you've got YouTube videos, you've got ebooks, even just like normal videos of that. It doesn't always just have to be reading, because as we say, not all learning has to happen by your head being in the books, basically. So thank you very much for those recommendations. I'm definitely going to be adding those to my list. I was talking to someone on LinkedIn the other day. I put a post out about the books that I've got for this year, and literally it's like a huge stack of them. I've got my own library now. And they were saying to me, I said to them that I'm going to need to take out a new mortgage at this rate. The amount of books I've got in my Amazon basket is ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. I'm very similar. I think of over 500, mostly on Kindle, but for me, I see them as investments and not
Absolutely.
expenses. And and I think it's also good. I've been guilty, and I'm sure Katie, you're similar to some. Well, maybe you're not, but previously I maybe just I do read quite quickly, but I think sometimes I used to just read books to kind of say I've read them, whereas sometimes you're better maybe slowing down a little bit, and that's why I like Kindle, is because I can maybe stretch at the same time and then highlight some notes from it and then save it into my Evernote and go back and read it. Or also the best way sometimes to learn something is by teaching it to others as well. So
absolutely, that is something I am such an advocate for. That's something I incorporate into all my teaching. With my, I always call them my kids. I haven't got any children; they're my students, but I call them my kids. So if I say that, that's who I'm talking about. I would, always get them, whatever I teach them, I let them then be the teacher, and I get them to teach it back to me. And they love that for a start, because they enjoy being in charge, and I pretend that I'm the student and I don't know, and I ask questions as if I'm, learning from them, and they absolutely love that. But it really boosts their confidence, because they're really understanding the processes then, and why they're doing certain things, so that then when they go into an exam, or they have to write an essay, or they're just doing their classwork, whatever it is, they're able to see the long-term goal. They're able to see what it is they're trying to reach, but how to then break that down, into step by step, which I just think is so important as well.
Yeah, no, it's a very, very good approach, definitely. That's something we might try to do internally. Take some tips from you.
Well, I'm always here if you need them. I'm sure you don't, because you're doing absolutely brilliantly anyway. But you mentioned there about, we were speaking about obviously, growing our mind and what we put in, and we need to nurture it. Something I'm really, really passionate about is mental health. I'm always very open, speaking about my own personal experience with mental illness. I've had a diagnosis of depression now for 11 years and anxiety for 6 years. So it's something, that I have to work on every single day. Would there be anything, that you would suggest for people to look after their mental health, to look after their wellness?
Yeah, no, well, thank you, Giddy, for sharing that. And I think definitely, given the climate with the pandemic, as you well know, that, there's going to be more and more of this
Hmm.
coming through. And I think it is, again, some of the points we touched on. I think for me, routine's hugely important, trying to get in a good routine. But I think one of the biggest mistakes I think that a lot of people make is they bite off too much too soon. They try
Hmm.
and climb Mount Everest or run a marathon. And I'm a big believer in just getting habits. Like people think they need more discipline. It's not discipline you need; it's more habits. And for me, even if I look back to the past 8 years, I just have shown up pretty much every day or 5 6 days a week and just put in a good shift, probably more than most. So I think it is getting into the right habits. I do think all the usual ones, you want to limit your technology use and
Hmm.
social media. I try to turn off my notifications. I mean, there's a book by Cal Newport. He's got a couple, Deep Work, and another one, Digital Minimalization. And yeah, to be honest, I struggle with some of it because I am very connected. Just kind of have to be quite responsive, but
Hmm.
I do try and minimize like notifications. And I think a lot of people do struggle to do focused work for 60 or even 20 minutes. It
Hmm.
is a challenge. But for me, it's like start small and try and get good habits. Like read one page, don't try and read the whole book. The
Hmm.
next day, maybe read 2 pages. Do a 10-minute walk as opposed to doing a massive gym session. For me, it's all about just momentum. I do yoga and meditation most days and have done for quite some time, and it definitely is beneficial. But again, it's not for everyone. Some
Hmm.
people have other, it could be painting, it could be poetry, just find dancing, whatever it is.
That's
So
it.
that's
It's just having that outlet, isn't it? It doesn't necessarily matter what it is that you're doing, as long as it's something that's calming you down, bringing you peace, makes you happy, makes you feel more centered and connected. And it's fantastic, that you say that you're doing something every day for that. Because I would be the same. I particularly to support my mental health, I have to do it. Otherwise, I end up not being very delightful to live with. Should we say?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, and it's recognizing it. I similar to there's plenty of mornings I wake up and, quite frankly, a grumpy shit. And for me, I do need to sweat a tiny bit just to kind of get me out of that
Hmm.
kind of. I feel it feels way better if I've just moved. Even Wim Hof, deep breathing.
Oh, I love Wim Hof. Love,
Yeah,
love, love. It's on my intentions list for this year though that I actually need to do it more. I started doing it about 2 years ago, I think it was, with my partner, and we'd watch the documentaries and the YouTube videos and things, and it's just amazing the effect that it has on your body and your mind.
yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah, I've actually done a course of his before, and I know a couple
Brilliant.
of his instructors, and
Wow.
I yeah, I mean, it definitely is very, very good. Cold showers, as much as I hate them, and I do have a very love-hate relationship with them. But again, it's just, start 10 seconds or 5 seconds, next day 10 seconds. So for me, it is all about habits and, exercise and nutrition play a key part as well. And
Hmm.
look, I love drinking red wine and other alcohol as much as others, but yeah, unfortunately, it does need to be limited. And I think even sometimes sounds a bit boring, but even just having some rules for yourself. Like for
Hmm.
me, I kind of